Welcome back to this week's episode of Rocky Mountain Marketing. Today, my guest is Lois Wyant. Now, Lois has always planned on having her own business, and it's just that her path has changed along the way. For the past 30 years, she and her husband have had a very successful portrait studio, and that's where she really started focusing in on the marketing. She went from the direct mail pieces before computers to creating websites for not just themselves, but for other photographers. She loves learning and continues the direction of marketing that they now have, JFT Web Marketing. And today we're going to do the Google. We're going to talk Google today. Lois, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me, Katie. I like that. We're going to do the Google.
Well, because it is, everybody wants to rank on the first page. They all want to be at the very, very top of the list. And without ads and without the right strategy and backlinks and SEO, it's pretty darn hard to do that. So I'm so thankful that you're going to come in and give us a tutorial on Google and all the things that go into helping your website rank and get higher and get that visibility. But before we dive into that, I want to talk a little bit about you. Tell us where you grew up and what life was like growing up.
Okay, well, I grew up on the west side of Indianapolis. I went to, at that time, was the second largest high school in the state. And so my class was 864, which nowadays, that's not a big deal for a lot of high schools. I was the very shy, quiet person. And I hated it when the teachers called on me. And so think about this in math class. My name is Lois. Okay. So in math class, it would be like a sudden shock if if the teacher were talking about, okay, which denominator is the lowest? You know, and I was like, oh, I don't know the answer to that. You know, I'd be like,
I never even thought about that.
Called on me. No, but I was the real quiet one. And then I had a real epiphany my senior year and decided, I've got to make something happen for myself. And I got maybe overly active in school. I joined clubs. I became president and vice president and secretary of clubs. And I just really enjoyed the last year and also through college. I changed my thought process and how I wanted to be. So that was a big change for me.
Well, and let's go through your career journey. You decided that you're going to start stepping up, raising your hand. You joined the clubs. Take us through your career journey. And now I know that we talked a little bit about your photography studio, which has now led into JFT Marketing. But take us where you started to where you are today.
Okay. Well, at about the age of 9. I was the stamper of Fuller Brush catalogs. So my father was a Fuller Brush man, and I had one of the responsibilities of stamping his name and address information on the back of all those little pamphlets that they pass out. And at that point, my dad was teaching me that there's a lot of responsibility. I need to take control of things, and I need to be in charge of my direction. And I joined a club in junior high for cake decorating and loved it. It was so much fun, and started baking cakes, for a family. And then a friend got married, so I did their wedding cake. And within a few months, people were calling me to make cakes for them. And so there was my biggest weekend. I had 5 wedding cakes. And that's how I paid for my college education, was doing cakes and making cakes. Now, on a Board of Health issue, yeah, I wasn't following the policies, but I did get a nice college education.
Now, let's dive into Google. Let's dive into how you can optimize your website so that you can show up in search. That is the $1 million question. How can I show up in search? And I'd love it if we talk just a little bit about some of the basics. Now, driving traffic to your website, that is what we all want from spending time of even having a website. how important is it to have the right SEO in your website so that you can show up a little bit easier?
Well, I think that a lot of people get caught up on the SEO part, which it is important, but I think the very beginning section is you need to first make sure you're following the Google rules,
Ah,
right? Because Google owns the game board, if you will. And so if you're not following the rules and getting to go and park place the right way, then they're not going to lift you up in the search rankings. So there's 6 points that Google makes public that's important to them. So can we go through those first?
yeah, let's do it.
All right. All right. So when Google makes a really big change, they give it a really cute little animal name. Okay. So penguin, panda, hummingbird. So these have all been really important changes that they gave warning of. So like, okay, this will happen in 2 months. And that gave us time to like prepare for it. So one of the most important things is that your site needs to be mobile friendly. Okay, but not just, oh, I can see it on a phone. All right, it has to be Google standard mobile friendly, which is a little different. All right, so Google actually has a link, and I'll share these links with you. You can put them in the description. Google has a link where you can go in and put your URL, and it'll tell you if it meets the standards of being Google mobile friendly. All right. And it's things like the content is large enough to read, the buttons are big enough to touch, the structure still remains well, and different things like that, that if you have, especially if you have an older website, you would want to make sure to check it, because just because you can see it on a phone doesn't mean that it's going to be the right format. All
Mhm.
right, so that's the number one important thing. And that's because that 75% of us are now searching for things on our phones.
Wow.
So Google says, this is important. This is where they're looking for everything. This is our priorities to get ranked on the first page.
Mhm.
And the second most important thing is how fast is your site loading? All right, this is emphasized again because we're searching so much on our phones. And Google has said that if you don't match our speed, we're not going to put you up, because if people have to sit there and wait for, imagine, have to wait for 2 or 3 seconds for your site to come up.
How dare they?
I know. Then we can't rank you up on the first page because you're not fast enough. I mean, we don't want people to go off of Google because they can't get your site loaded. So that's the number two thing. And there's some certain things that can be done. There's some plugins that can be added to a website, because the number one problem with websites that make it slower are photographs or graphics, images. All right. So there's certain plugins that will compress these images. There's certain there's certain plugins that will load the content first, and then while the image is loading, it'll show content, and then as you scroll down, then the images show. So it's kind of a delayed load, if you will. But what happens is that it's meeting then Google's speed so that your site can still rank. Okay, the number three thing is a few years back, Google said, hey, no duplicate content. When people come to your website, they need to see original content, because they had certain situations where people were copying or duplicating other sites that were already on the first page. So now Google is checking for, if you would say it correctly, they're checking for plagiarism. All right,
That
you
makes
have to
sense.
write your own content. So that makes it a whole new series. It's like when you go in and you're like thinking, oh, what should I write about? What should I do? And things like that. It requires some research, because you should definitely go in and write content about things that people are writing about or searching for.
Mhm.
You want to make sure you're writing things that people are really interested in. All right, number 4. All right, this was one of those fancy animal named items. Reviews. All right, Google decided a few years back that if you're not getting reviews, then you're probably not open. So, and they have made sure that it's very clear that you cannot reward or pay or do anything like that anybody to leave a review. So it needs to be a very authentic, real review. All right. So because they had situations where, somebody had 50 relatives and say, hey, go leave a review for me.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so it has to be very natural and real reviews. And with reviews, you want to make sure that you have a process or a system to ask people to leave reviews. So some people have a hard time with that because it's like, well, what if somebody's unhappy and they leave a bad review? Well, that kind of makes you look like a real business. It's very unusual that somebody would have just a complete 5-star review. There's got to be somebody that you're not pleased. So you need to have a system where you're asking people to leave reviews. And Google likes to see a range of 3 to 6 reviews a month. So
Man, that's a lot of reviews.
it is a lot of reviews. Yeah. And people have said that if they go and they're shopping for a company and it looks like that business hasn't had a review in like 3 months, then they don't really trust them, because that means somebody hasn't been happy enough to leave a review. Now, on the other side of that, you have to take into consideration that probably approximately 80% of the people that you make unhappy are always there to leave a review. But 20% of the people that are very happy with you will not leave a review.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a point of, if you just ask, especially the people that you know are happy with your business, they will leave a review. They just don't think about it because they're just happy. So if they're unhappy, they think, oh, I want to tell everybody. But if they're happy, they're like, oh, I'm happy. They don't think about, oh, I'm going to tell everybody.
Yeah.
So if you ask the happy people, especially, to leave a review, they will do that.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and it's similar with podcasts too. I mean, podcast reviews and ratings are huge for, getting found for listeners and
Right.
getting more people to listen to your show. So
So
everyone
right
listening,
now we're asking everybody watching Katie's show to leave a review.
exactly. Please like, comment, and review the show. But no, and it's true too with reviews. I had no idea that was 3 to 6 a month. I mean, now for a lot of businesses like yours truly here, or real estate agents or brokerages, that's one of the things that you might not be having 3 to 6 reviews a month. So that's kind of a hard goal to achieve. Now, I know that we only got through the top 3 things that Google rules for rankings, but I want to talk a little bit more about this reviews before we continue on. So you mentioned, have a system in place to get reviews. How do you set up a system to have reviews? I know I have mine. I have my G page set up that automatically, but if somebody's like, wait, what's Katie talking about with the G page here? Just walk us through maybe how to set up a good system to try and get those 3 to 6 reviews a month.
Okay. All right. I have 3 ideas. Okay. All right. So let's say you're a service business. All right. We'll go with that for now. All right. Maybe as the service person is leaving, they give somebody a business card that says, please share your feedback and tell us how we did, with like a little bit.ly link maybe to their Google page. All right. So if somebody has something in hand and they like sit it on their kitchen or they sit it somewhere, then they're like, especially if you made them happy, they're like, oh yeah, they did a really great job. I want to, and even add like a little perk in there. Like say I went to fix your heater, said, oh, Katie, I hope that everything goes well. And I hope that if the service went well, that you'll please take this card and leave us a review. And if you could mention me, I'd really like that. So now I've made a personal request to somebody, please leave a review and mention me, because we built this rapport while we were here, and you like me. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Yeah.
So that's an option. So you could make like a little business card and just have the service person, and maybe you're giving the service person a little perk, every time their name is mentioned in a Google review, they get an extra bonus or something like that.
$5 Starbucks gift card or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, second option is you could actually, after the job is done, you could send the company a postcard, or sorry, you could send the customer a postcard. So there again, the postcard just says, we're checking up to make sure everything went well. It's important to us that our service members do an excellent job. Would you please give us your feedback with a Bentley link to their Google review? Now, obviously, if the service person comes back to you and says, man, that person was hard, they chewed me out, you don't want to send them a postcard. But you're making an effort to tell people that their input and their review is important to you. All right. So third option is if you have like an email system, you could have it set up where like maybe you have an automatic email system, and you could go ahead and put them in so that maybe 2 days after their service call, they get an email. So then they can get there again. It's just a personal request to leave a review.
I love those three ideas. And, one of the things that I do is I have in my, after like at the end of a contract, or at the end of I work with a lot of trainings. And so at the end of our training sessions, I will include the link to the review. But those are great ideas for people that have the brick and mortar businesses, that are out in the field, that are having that face-to-face customer interaction. So I love those examples. Let's dive back in to the other three ways that Google's rules for rankings.
Okay. So, all right, we've
done mobile friendly,
okay,
no duplicate content, and reviews.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and the
fast speed. So yeah, so we're down to the last two.
We're down to the last two. All right. The next one is really hard. I have to be real honest with you. The next one is so hard because Google said that if your website gets a lot of traffic, we're going to rank it up higher. Now, here's the problem with that. All right. If you're on page, say 3 of Google, you're not getting any clicks. Nobody's searching on you. Maybe if you're on the top of page 2, you might be getting a couple clicks, but 90% of the people are clicking on the people that are on the first page. So it's kind of like you're banging your head against a brick wall, because how are you going to get the traffic to your website if you're not on the first page of Google? Mm-hmm. So I guess you could make sure all your relatives visit your website once a day. But all right, so let me explain this. All right. There's a difference between black hat, gray hat, and white hat SEO. Okay, black hat is the people who choose to try to figure out all the roundabout ways to outsmart Google. Okay, and just a really hard one. White hat is the person or the company who does everything strictly by Google rules. And the gray hat is the one who goes mostly white hat, but every so often might try to do something that's not unethical or anything like that, but just uses other systems to help work with the system. All right. So this is a gray hat suggestion. All right. So I have found, and I'll share this with you too, I have found a program that is like an app, and you put it on your phone and your computer. It's best to have it on at least 3 items. All right. And what this app does, it's connected with everybody else's phone and computers in the country that is on this app. And what it does is it goes to your website. You tell it specifically what page you want it to go to. So if you're trying to get a specific page, let's say you're a dentist and you want to up your rankings for your wisdom teeth pulling. So you put that page into the app, and what the program does is it sends a click to your website on there, and then it visits like one or two other pages, and then it ends on contact page. So in Google's algorithm, that's telling Google that this person, if you will, visited this page, looked around for other things, but then went to the contact page because they contacted you. All right. That flows with Google's algorithm. So what this does is that since this is on a network of different apps, it sends somewhere in the range of about 250 to 300 clicks to your website a month. So that then gives you that juice of website visits, so that Google like, oh, look, people are looking for this.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, look, they got 250 clicks this month on wisdom teeth pulling, they must be popular in this area. And then what you do is that, like, if you're on page 3 and that moves you up to page 2, then once you get into like page 1, you just cut back the number of actual clicks that the app is visiting, so that the regular people who are searching, because now you're on page 1, will create the natural clicks. So that's our little trick to get clicks to your website.
Yeah, well, and it's a very handy trick. I think that given a lot of great ideas there. Now, the final rule from Google for ranking.
Okay, that is backlinks. So Google says that if people are sharing links, which would become a backlink to your website, then the content that you're sharing must be important. So, and those backlinks can be to blogs or social media, just any form of backlink. Press releases are a great way of creating backlinks. And often people say, well, how many backlinks do I need? And there's some different programs that you could actually go in and find out what your competition is doing. And so you need 3 backlinks more than your competition. So if you're wanting to really know how much work do I need to put into this, find out what your competition is doing and do 3 or 4 more links more than them, so that you look like you're just as important, or your content is just as significant as your competition.
Ooh, I love that. And now, so if someone's listening, they're like, wait, this kind of makes sense. So with backlinks, you mentioned blogs, you've mentioned having press releases. Now, if they're saying, wait, so I backlink on my website, or do I backlink on somebody else's website? Explain backlinks on where you actually put them.
Okay, you can link within your website. So if you have, say you do a blog post on one of the main pages about one of the main page topics, you can backlink to that. That's an interlink, which still helps. But what you want is a backlink from something that's not your website. So, share a post on Reddit or different things of that nature, so that you get that type of backlink.
Yeah, I found that for my blogs, I do it on Medium. So just another way to try and get stuff out there. But there's so many rules and restrictions and tricks of the trade to help you rank higher on Google. And like you said, throughout the show numerous times, if you're not on that first, or at least at the top of the second page, you're probably not going to get clicked on. This is a very important part of your online strategy, how you show up on Google. And it's something that I think a lot of people might say, well, I have a website, and having a website versus having a website that works for you are two different things.
Oh, that's true. It makes a really big difference. I mean, you can have a beautiful website on the third page and a so-so website on the first page, but the first page person is going to get the business. So, and especially if you really follow these aspects, and you can get into that 3-pack, so if you don't know what that means, so at the beginning, usually when you do a search on Google, the top are ads, and then right underneath that is a little section where it's a map with 3 businesses. they get 80% of the clicks. So if you can get in the 3-pack, then that's the super goal. But being at least on first page gives you more exposure.
Now, before we finish up, I want to ask you one final two questions left. So first question is there any piece of advice that you would give to somebody if they say, okay, Lois, you convinced me I need to pay attention to my website. I don't even know where to begin. What would you say to that person that's ready to go out there and take action right now?
I would say that you really need to first off find out if your site is mobile friendly and fast enough. Because I would hate for you to go and do a lot of work with content and different things of that nature and find out that your site's not mobile friendly. So it will not be on the first page if it's not mobile friendly or fast enough. So those are the two things to really start with. And it may put you in a position where you have to do a new website, or you need to do a different WordPress theme or whatever type of site you have. But those would be the first two things. You've got to make sure that it's mobile friendly and fast.
Well, Lois, this has been such a great conversation. Where can we find out more about you and your business online?
Well, you can look for J as in Jack, F as in Frank, T as in Tom, web marketing. So it's jftwebmarketing.com, or find me on the social medias as JFT Web Marketing.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you, Katie. It's been a pleasure.